Welcome back. I'm Mabel Jong, and you're watching coverage of the World Healthcare Congress here in Washington, D.C. Our next guest has been described as one of the most innovative benefits leaders in our country, and it is very interesting to hear that he wants people to start from scratch. Let's talk to David Contorno now. David, it's you've said that people should start from scratch if they want to get the correct benefits package going. What does that look like if you start from scratch?
Well, I think we first need to identify that the system we have is actually very purposeful. As dysfunctional and as expensive as it has become what it was designed to become, which is an inefficient, high cost, really example of the excess of wealth in this country that's sucking the wealth from so many millions of people. And so in order to deconstruct that, we have to start with something as simple as how a doctor gets paid. I think one of the problems with our industry, with the healthcare industry as a whole, is that we're pointing the fingers in the wrong place. And if you look at government regulation and you look at all the things that are trying to be done even at the employer level, and 52% of people get their health insurance through their employer, what you see is this attack on insurance. Now, there's no question that insurance is part of the problem, but I view insurance as the messenger. It is reflective of a very high cost, low quality, low efficiency healthcare system, so it becomes very high cost and very low quality and very inefficient. And so again, we need to sidestep that insurance and say, okay, we'll fix that later instead of fixing that first. Not to get into a political debate, but one of the tenets that the Republicans have been pushing for quite a long time is insurance across state lines and trying to make a more competitive marketplace. So imagine for a second if I said to you, you know, Mabel, I'm going to make your car more affordable. And the way I'm going to make it more affordable for you to buy a car is by allowing Geico and Allstate and Nationwide to compete across state lines. Does that make any sense? It doesn't affect the price of the car. So how does allowing insurance companies to compete across state lines affect the price of healthcare? It doesn't. We need to fix the healthcare first. And I think as brokers, consultants, we're focusing on the insurance. As employers, we're focusing on the cost of insurance. As employees, we're focusing on the deductibles. We need to start with how we pay for healthcare.
Okay. You believe that brokers should be more open to where the revenue comes from.
Yeah.
Is that your sense that they aren't open now?
They are not. And I think if most employers knew how their broker gets paid, first of all, traditionally, and this is starting to change, but traditionally we've been paid a commission of the insurance premiums. Well, that means, again, I mentioned these backwards incentives. Well, that means that I get paid more as my clients' rates go up. That's backwards. If I come in with a 22% rate increase, I should get a 22% pay cut, not a 22% pay raise. So again, it's turning those incentives around. So a lot of consultants are going to fee-based, which is a good step in the right direction. But guess what? I have no problem asking my client for a $60,000 bonus when I can show them that I saved them. There's a difference between saving an employer money and having it not cost as much as it could have. Those are two different things. Actual savings of $600,000 and I ask for $60,000, I think most employers would be happy to write me that check.
Now, are you concerned at all that if we rein in the costs and we find out what things really cost and we rein that all in, that it will cut down in innovation in healthcare, with the way people are served in that regard?
Quite the opposite, actually. There is a tremendous lack of innovation in healthcare. And one of the fallacies that we live under in this country is that we have a really good, innovative healthcare system. The only thing it's innovative at is becoming more and more profitable. It is not innovative in terms of how it delivers care. As a matter of fact, if you took the ineffective and unnecessary care that we do in this country and you had it sit as its own economy, it would be the 16th largest economy in the world. So what we need to do is we need to reward the doctors and hospitals that are innovating and are efficient. Right now, we actually reward the opposite. For hospitals that provide inefficient, low quality care because we're mostly in a fee-for-service environment, those doctors and hospitals do more things because they're not doing them as well, and they get paid more money. So we need to turn that around. I'm all about incentivizing and promoting those that do it well, but right now we're incentivizing the opposite.
You've been described, as I mentioned before, as one of America's most innovative benefits leaders. Why do you think people view you in that way?
Well, I think part of it is that I've never had a path to follow. A lot of brokers come from the carrier side at some point, and they see brokers that are making a lot more money than them, and they want a piece of that, and that's why they do that. I never had any of that preconceived knowledge of how the industry should work. All I knew was that when I started in the business at 17 years old, I was coming to my clients with bad news every year, and I was then, after the employer, which was my client, made a decision on that bad news, I then delivered bad news to the employees, and I said, I don't want to do this. This is not what I didn't get in a career to be bad news after bad news after bad news. And so I said, well, I want to change this. And admittedly, it took me a long time, but I started with the end in mind. I started with the results I wanted to deliver, and then back-ended into deconstructing that. And I guess that makes it innovative because not much has changed. It's not rocket science. As a matter of fact, it amazes me how CFOs and even employees and patients allow to happen what happens, because the very things, the tenets that we believe in that need to happen, employers and employees and patients are doing everywhere else, in everything else that they consume. One of the things that really boggles my mind is the inability to get a price in healthcare prior to consuming it. Imagine if we sat down at a restaurant together and we opened up the menu and there was no pricing, and we asked the server, hey, what's good here and how much does it cost? And they said, well, you'll find out what's good after you taste it and find out how much it costs when you get the bill. Nobody would order anything, but yet we do it in healthcare every single day.
Well, is it because people are so anxious to get what they need that they're willing to pay the price?
I'm anxious to get a new iPhone, and I'll go wait in line for the newest iPhone and pay a lot of money for it, but I'm not going to overpay.
But is that different from healthcare?
I think we think it is, but and I hate to think that the cost of care would get in the way of anybody not getting the care they need, but it is. So we can pretend it's not, or we can think it's shameful that it does get in the way, but it is in the way. So I think our lack of caring of costs, I think the biggest disconnect in healthcare is that the consumer, which is the patient, and the payer, which is typically the employer or the government, are two separate entities. That's where the dysfunction has been allowed. That's how it's been allowed, is because of that disconnect. And so all the other markets, the providers, the hospitals, the pharmaceutical companies, capitalize upon that. When EpiPen went from $100 to $600, made a lot of news, right? But when a patient went into a drugstore to pick it up and their copay went from $25 to $75, they would get mad at the insurance company, even though at $75 the insurance company was picking up a much larger percentage of the cost than they were before when it was $100. They don't see that. And so again, it's recognizing that the abusive, expensive, inefficient nature of health insurance is coming from the abusive, inefficient nature of healthcare. And the one thing that let's start with something simple. Healthcare and health insurance are two different things, and it drives me nuts when the front page of the Wall Street Journal will have an article on healthcare costs going up, and then the whole article is about the rise of insurance premiums. We don't talk about how housing prices are going up, and we talk about homeowners insurance rates going up. We think about every other type of insurance much more logically, and we recognize that insurance is a mechanism to pay for something, but it's not. We don't get health care from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. We get health insurance from Blue Cross. They don't have doctors that treat us. They don't make medications. So we need to separate those in our mind, and then I think it's those little baby steps that we need to work on.
David Contorno, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And I've just been speaking with David Contorno of Lake Norman Benefits. Stay tuned, we have much more to come. I'm Abel Jong, and thanks for watching.